a balanced government is always the most effective government, and I'm not sure we're at that role right now. I enjoy being a Republican. I enjoy representing you as your 21st Representative District Representative, and I am asking for your vote to enable me to continue that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
First question, do you support increasing any existing taxes or creating any new taxes to get the state more revenue? Can you give us an example of where the state is making good use of revenue and an example of where the state is making poor use of revenue?
Okay, first of all, before we start, I want to apologize. Do we take turns going first, or how do you want to do it?
Good thought, go ahead.
I'll go first, okay. David, I didn't mean to take away. In my opinion, I think the state of Delaware has a lot of issues. I think one of the #1 priorities of a representative is to solve problems. I think our biggest problem right now is I don't know that we spend our money efficiently. I am not totally against ever raising taxes, but I don't think a tax should ever be raised without first doing the due diligence necessary to reduce spending. I do believe sometimes in order to reduce spending, there needs to be a give and take, and there needs to be some consideration for revenue sources, but I do not agree with just outright tax and spend policies. I've been in the legislature now for 6 years. I've been fortunate enough to serve on the bond committee for the last 2 years. And the bond committee basically is the committee that handles infrastructure. And infrastructure is mainly funded by the Transportation Trust Fund. I was a proponent against a 10-cent tax for gas. I do not believe the Transportation Trust Fund is starving for money. I think the general fund is starving for money and raids the Transportation Trust Fund, and I think that's inappropriate. I'd like to see us use the Transportation Trust Fund money in the bond as it was designed to do, as it's set up to do in a very effective way. And I would like to see, if then we don't have the money we need in the general fund, I would like to see a balance between cutting spending and, if necessary, increase tax revenues.
Yes, if revenue needs to be increased, there were taxes I would support increasing, and that would be higher taxes on the wealthy. I would support, as a former smoker, I would support raising cigarette tax, or taxes on all tobacco. We have the best courts in the country to settle corporate disputes. I believe those corporations should pay more for that privilege. And there is a new source of revenue we could create if we legalize marijuana and tax the selling of it. As far as what the state has done well, as a lifelong critic of the powers that be, I'm not good at addressing that, but I have a few thoughts on what the state has done poorly lately. I believe that we should stop giving tax breaks to large corporations to locate in this state. For example, AstraZeneca, all the money we've spent on that, what are we going to have left? The GM plant that we threw money at Fisker to build a budget $40,000 car when we could be building wind turbines at that plant. The Bloom Energy deal, where the legislature defined the burning of fracked natural gas as renewable, and we, the ratepayers of Delmarva, are subsidizing that. The Sweetheart deal, building an off-ramp for a liquor distributor on Route 1. So we need people in Dover who are ready to call the powers that be on these sort of deals. The Delaware way is just another way of saying the two corporate parties get along too well.
Thank you. Okay, next one, you're first. Recently, Delaware's legislature decided to ignore the threat of rising tides in the Delaware City area and transferred publicly owned undeveloped land in a floodplain to a development corporation for private development. What's your position on this public policy decision?
I have a short answer to that. I'm opposed to that sort of a deal. And I do believe that this sort of decision sets a bad precedent as far as public funding to subsidize this sort of development. That's short and sweet.
Thank you, Vic. First of all, I just wanted to address real quickly, my opponent clearly mentioned some things like the off-ramp that Tygani's got from Ruth Ann Minner, who was all done by the Democratic Party and before I was even elected. Mentioned some other things about the government picking winners and losers. The government should never pick winners and losers. If you're in business, you know that very well. I run my fitness centers now for 20-something years. I don't think it's right that the government would then come in and subsidize someone else to run a fitness center. They do it in the name of jobs, but that's a farce, because what they're doing is they're not creating jobs, they're moving jobs. They're taking jobs from the person they chose, and they're giving the jobs to the person they didn't choose. They also tried to pick and choose some solar power companies. I don't believe that the government should pick any winners and losers. I think it's a little bit hypocritical to say it's okay to pick winners and losers if you're talking about the green deal, but it's not okay if you're talking about the regular deal. The private sector needs to thrive the way the private sector needs to thrive. And that means people need to make investments with their hard-earned money, put sweat into the table, and make sure they're successful in the businesses they run without the government underwriting them and subsidizing them. Having gone to the question, Vic, you and I both know that that was a terrible mistake. There's something out there that was called smart growth. Back when I was running for county council president, I had a lot of opportunities to learn how the government should and shouldn't run. There's some really good parts of smart growth, and there's really bad parts of smart growth. But what you do know is you don't continue to build in areas where you have flooding problems and tide issues. The government needs to stay out of those kind of decisions. I don't think it's the government's right to sit there again and pick a winner or a loser to be in a situation that I think absolutely hurts that entire community. In 10 to 15 years, they're going to be going through the same thing we had to go through when Glenville got flooded. Every single time we have a big storm out on Kirkwood Highway, I'm running over to Roseville Park to make sure their houses aren't underwater. There are communities that are getting clobbered because of the infrastructure, and we just need to control it better.
If the governor's 10-cent per gallon tax were to be passed, or something like it, what could the legislature do to assure that the money would be used for transportation-related projects rather than what was actually done?
I think the short answer to that is, honestly, with the one-party control of the Senate, House, and the governorship and a supermajority, nothing. The first year I was appointed to the bond committee, I was lucky enough to make enough noise and talk about the Transportation Trust Fund and exploit all the issues, what was going on with it. The Transportation Trust Fund currently is underwriting the general fund by $40 million. That's wrong. The Transportation Trust Fund is currently shifting monies from the general fund, and we're paying for them in the Transportation Trust Fund to subsidize all the expenses of Deldi. That is wrong. Those expenses alone move back into the general fund where they belong, brings in, I believe, somewhere in the vicinity of $150 to $200 million to the Transportation Trust Fund that we've been rated for 8 to 10 years. If that money goes back to where it belongs, the Transportation Trust Fund is healthy. Why would we give another 10-cent tax increase to a Transportation Trust Fund that's already being rated over and over and over to balance a general fund? Put the Transportation Trust Fund back the way it was originally designed to be. Then let's deal with the issues of the general fund. If the general fund then has finance issues, let's cut some spending. Let's develop some of the ideas and concepts that bring entrepreneurialism and jobs back to Delaware, which will really give you a tax base. And let's make the tough decisions that if we have to have some tax increases, we begin that discussion for tax increases for the general fund, not trying to hide it with taxes for the Transportation Trust Fund.
As far as the 10-cent tax increase goes, yeah, obviously, if a bill is passed, the caveat would have to be put in there that is only what the money can be used for. I'm not experienced. Mike seems to indicate that the Democratic Party wouldn't even put that caveat in there and would just go along with whatever Markell wanted to do with the money. I don't know. But since I have the time, I want to address the idea that only private industry can create jobs. That is false. If people recall, back in the 1930s, this country was in severe economic depression and the government created jobs. We are in those kinds of crises today. Instead of a New Deal, we need a Green New Deal. A New Deal that would create jobs in renewable energy, that would create solar jobs. If it's not profit making, but it's the right thing to do, private business won't do it. The government must do it. We need to insulate homes. We could be tremendous amounts of energy savings if we did that, but no energy company wants to do that because they will make less profit. So there are things that must be done by a collective will of the people, which is known as government. Thank you.
Time for summing up.
And I'm first. Yes, my opponent has stated previously that one of his issues is constituent services. That's nice. I would expect every state legislator to be responsible to the needs of their constituents. I would certainly do the same if I were elected. But is that enough? For 3 terms now, my opponent has sponsored only one memorable bill. He's not challenged the powers that be, and by the way, I'll mention that the memorable bill is the act allowing any adult to marry any other adult, and I applaud him for sponsoring that act. But it's clear from his voting patterns, he frequently goes along the Republican Party line. I believe it's imperative to elect people to office who'd be willing to introduce new ideas and new ways of considering how our state, our society, and our world must work together in harmony. We're in numerous crises which require bold new visions in order to deal with them. Sea levels are rising, and Delaware stands to lose land, roads, property if it isn't dealt with. Good jobs where people do something productive are badly needed. We can create those jobs without going in the direction of releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere by embarking on a green jobs program. Insulating homes, encouraging solar businesses, getting to work on getting those wind turbines built in the bays. We need to view our area of the county as the rich farmland it used to be. We need to get back to that, to growing gardens. We need to build a community, and gardens would help that, instead of chemically poisoning our lawns so we can have nice, evenly grass growing. There are many things I would push for as a legislator that my opponent opposes: single-payer health care, reversing the trend of carving out public money for charter schools, etc. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. I just want to obviously clarify something. As most of you know, in Dover, when you are in the minority party, you have to first of all bring a bill, and it has to get addressed by a committee. So if you write 10 bills a year and they don't even bring them to a committee, obviously you don't have an opportunity to sponsor a bill. When you have a supermajority in the House and the Senate and the executive branch, it's very difficult to bring bills to the table. If you do remember, one of the bills, I think that was popular, and I won't go through all of them, was the reduction of county council to a reasonable size rather than doubling its size, which many of you thought was a good idea when I was trying to push that. And I'm not going to go through and defend myself on my bills. If somebody wants to actually look it up and use the computer properly, they'll be able to see what I've done. More importantly, what I would like to do is express the 3 most important things as a legislator I believe are important. Number 1 is constituent service. My job is to take care of the people in the 21st and to work hard to go to every single PTA, every single community meeting, civic league meetings, problems with bell towers, problems with Hooters, restaurants in areas, problems. Our job is to solve problems. Unfortunately, sometimes solving a problem makes some people happy and some people sad. I'm really honored that my opponent said that I was a strong Republican, because I'm going to tape that and bring it to the caucus, because I just got my head handed to me the last 2 years for some of the bipartisan votes that I made. Because you know why? Because they were the right votes. We're all here, we're all trying our best. God put us in here to work together and be together, and I don't believe the government should get in the middle of that. I don't believe in sponsoring a ton of bills. I think we have enough laws, but I do believe in solving problems. The third part of my potential duties as your state representative is to create a world in which we do have job creation. The state of Delaware is the largest employer in Delaware. I think that's a problem. It has been, it will be. We need to do something to create jobs in Delaware, and I think I'm the right guy to do that. So if you give me that opportunity to be your elected representative again, I would be honored and grateful. Thank you.